Hi, Go of 10. Yes, Go of 10 is Antti, the I guess sort of the boss at the Nordico Dojo. I He used to chat from the Nordico Dojo account, so then it got confusing whether it's me or him. But I think everything works. I think so. I'd like confirmation from people that this is actually live, um, before I actually start doing stuff. There were some issues going live where for some reason my stream got cut and it didn't tell me. So that was very odd. Working. Yeah, nice. Lovely, lovely. Hi, Siku. Hi, Baby Shamble. Seems to be working. Sound could be a bit louder. Sound could be a bit louder. I can actually fix that. Hi, another Walther. Nice. I have turned up the volume a little bit. I hope that helps. Okay, looks and sounds fine. That's great. There's even a few of you. So, it's probably a good time to start actually doing the lecture. I chose a slightly provocative title, I think, or maybe not provocative, but odd title, because it sounds a bit like a tautology. I would assume that most people think that they know that playing dame isn't good. You don't particularly need to be told that. Hi, Fluttermouse. Welcome. Um, Obviously, I hope to expand a little bit on what I mean. Sounds like fighting logic. Uh, I'd uh like to hear some development on that, Siku. Not quite sure what you mean. So I specifically want to talk about dame in like a specific context because even though people know that playing dame is not a good thing, sometimes they play it anyway because they think they have a reason. More like anti-fighting logic. Yeah, I it sounds more like that, yes. To me, the name seemed to make sense as in how to avoid to connect on dame, etc. Yeah, Fanshawe makes a great point. That's one of the things I'm going to talk about. Yes. Um, Often in fights you end up playing cuts and such that just end up being dame. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So you you have a very good idea of what this lecture is going to be about. So maybe I chose a good topic because you get to learn about something you know is important, or it's a bad topic as you know already. But how not to play dame while running away. One of the later examples I'm going to use in this lecture involves that. Yes. Um, so I thought I'd start off with just an example. That's how I end up to play dame most of the time. Yeah, yeah, me too. Me too. Um, so I'm going to start with an example. I usually like to start with the examples that make me think of doing a lecture on on a specific topic. And usually it's some interaction with my students or some like personal epiphany I have about the game of Go. It's either. In this particular case, it was a game, a teaching game I played with a student. And I'll just go ahead and show the game, and I'll show the important moment in the game that kind of inspired the lecture. There were two different teaching games with students. So I'll just start with that. My student is about one done, and we're playing with like 20 reverse komi. I'll speed through the beginning of the game. I'm white, obviously, and all of this is good-ish, like nothing too bad going on here, just normal Go. And I wanted to get to this particular moment because Black Black played O12, which is fine. I mean, I criticized it very lightly, but O O12 not being the best move is aside the point of the lecture. The reason I wanted to talk about this moment is that Black has these stones over here that aren't weak exactly, but they're also not strong. Like in an ideal world, I'd like to pressure them somehow or make them a little bit uncomfortable. And there's a good question as to how to do that. Oh, hi, Alfaro. And I'd maybe be a bit curious as to what chat suggestions are here. Tanuki is fine. If you don't want to attack this thing or do anything to it, it's fine. It's not easy to attack. It's sort of what one might call a golden group. But I still think that there's some reasonable ways of playing in the area. Not just to attack Black's group, but also to help Whitestones. I'd like to play the hat here. The hat. I think the hat, that sounds like something like an enclosure, like you want to enclose Boshi. Wait, I'm like, oh, Boshi is cap, right? Yeah. So maybe K8. K8 kind of looks like the type of move that would look like a cap. I mean, if you want to Tanuki, there's some like nice Tanuki options. Um, but Fluttermouse wants to cap. Spoiler alert, I capped in the game. So there's that. Uh, I think cap is probably the most natural move from my perspective, which is why I was surprised when my student didn't agree. So that's why this example was interesting to me. After the game, so I did play the cap, and after the game, he told me he was surprised I didn't play S2. And from his perspective, he was thinking white takes my ice space and I run. And that's a reasonable plan as well, I would say, but there's a reason it didn't attract me. And the main reason is that I consider S2 smaller than K8, which is a contentious thing to say. I don't think that's obvious. I think it's close. But from his perspective, I think he was thinking, let's take black's eye shape so that black is a little bit weaker. And from my perspective, I wanted to use the fact that black isn't super, super strong to potentially make black play S2 for themselves. Like I was in my ideal world was this. And then I get the next move. And there was a curious, I'm going to say, discrepancy between how I wanted to use S2 and how my student thought I wanted to use S2. So my student thought, oh, white plays S2 to take black's ice space, and I was like, let's coerce black to play a second line endgame move. You're playing from the weaker group, so it can't be wrong. That's a pretty decent way of looking at it. Yes, I think that that's a good point. So one would ask, why is K8 not a dame, and why is S2 a dame? I mean, it's not a dame, but it's the dame for the purpose of this example. K8 weakens and strengthens both. Having to play S2 is kind of sad. Yeah, so K8 is kind of an empty move. It's hard to understand why it's valuable. The main reason I value it is that I also have this group to settle. So from my perspective, having my group like semi-connected or at least related to the lower side is really helpful. And indeed, that's why I think K8's a valuable move. Conversely, S2 is second line endgame. Yeah, like who goes woo woo? I got S2. Yeah, exactly. Nobody, at least on move 52. So, um, yes, I indeed want black to play S2 rather than playing S2 myself. Is this linked to the idea of running before living pathetically? Partially, yes. Yes. In fact, we're going to look at examples later of people living pathetically, and where maybe you need to ask for a bit more or be a little bit less comfortable to get something better. So now this example that I'm picking is slightly ambiguous because it's not really clear which move is actually better. So K8 is okay, but it's actually unclear, for example, about whether it's sente. Like if black just tenukis, and then is this obviously a kill for white? I don't think that's clear at all. Maybe black can try and play some sente moves beforehand just to make sure that they're like completely alive or have enough eyes, and then Tanuki. So maybe like this. I'm not saying this is good, by the way. I'm just saying that you could do it, which is different. And then so this is a completely random living sequence. I'm not reading it with too much detail, but this already looks like, yeah, black can easily make eyes. Potentially black can even Tanuki again. So something like this. And okay, Tanuking again might be a bit far. might be a bit far. So let's just say black lives somehow. Maybe this move. And therefore, you can say the Kate isn't necessarily Sente, but I'm going to argue that potentially it's still worth defending the group. And the reason that black should defend the group here, funnily enough, is exactly the same reason why I think B is a good move. Man, chat is getting very wholesome. Good job. So my idea was that if black Tanukis, which I thought black could probably do, and this is like a simplified example. Once I get S2, what does black have to do in order to live their group? What does this move look like that sounds like the lecture? In fact, you could say, what do these moves look like that sound like the title of the lecture? Well, it's a tiny bit dummy. And I was thinking that like maybe S2 isn't big enough to play on its own, but if I get to play S2 and black has to play a dame, then I'm not that unhappy, am I? S2 is comparatively gigantic with respect to a dame. And for this reason, my student chose to just defend. Like he just played these exchanges, which are actually bad exchanges. I don't recommend them, and then lived. Yeah, that's as dumb as it gets, indeed. So in the game, black chose to live, which I think is a reasonable decision. These markings are just markings from like afterwards. I reviewed the game with my student, and we like the file got a bit cluttered. I apologize for that. So black chose to defend here, and what is the end result? The end result is that black plays this S2 endgame, and I get to like not really connect, but I get to relate my stones and strengthen my outside. And I thought that this was pretty worthwhile in the context of this game because before my group was weak. And I was pretty glad to make black play S2, whereas my student was kind of happy to just get S2 and get it over with. Like now that black's alive, black doesn't have to worry about anything ever again. Black's just alive. And that's a nice thing to have in Go. So funnily enough, we were both kind of happy here. And this is a quite a nuanced example to start with because I think that neither side really gained from this exchange because okay, Kate is big in the sense that I defend my stones. It also doesn't actually make any points. And black had a group that wasn't alive and now it's alive. So neither side has that much to complain about. The reason I brought up the example is that we disagreed on the subject of this lecture, and that's what inspired the lecture. And we're going to be looking at quite a few examples of attacking situations where you can attack a shape, attack your group, maybe try and cut some stones, and you have to think about whether you want to play the cut yourself or you want to try and kill your opponent, take their eye shape, or if you want to make them play the small move. It's not always a dame, but like S2 is not a dame, but it is a big move. You have to think about whether you want to play the move yourself or whether you want to make your opponent play it. And I think that the stronger you get, or the stronger I've gotten at least, I've noticed that many attacks end up as me trying to coerce my opponent into playing a small move. That's like the benefit of my attack often. White is stronger in their center, so it should be good for white. White is stronger in the center. The reason it's not that good in this particular example, Zogi, is that there are some issues around the cut at B. Like black has several ways to cut the white shape, and that's why I didn't say that white's connected. I said that the white stones are now related to each other, and related is I guess a way of saying. In fact, I can just speed forward and show you what happened in the game. Once black does cut, which black did do later, these stones are severed and they have to suffer and fend for themselves. Whereas if black had gotten this move in the first place, it's just white who's weak and not black. So in the game, getting this formation of stones, even though it's cuttable, it's still stronger, and that's what makes it worthwhile. I will mention that at this particular moment in the game, I strongly considered just playing J9. which is a bit slow. It's even a bit slow in an even game, but this game I was giving a 20 komi handicap, so I was very reluctant to just play a slow move like this. I just played elsewhere, but I think in a normal komi game I would have considered this fairly strongly. Maybe not now, but in the near future I would have considered it. Maybe in like 10 moves or something. Yeah, so that's this example. And this example is quite nuanced. If you go to a computer, like I was thinking, I don't even know if I'm right or my student's right, because S2 is not that small. It's a reasonably big endgame move. Is A worth more than S2? I'm not 100% sure. I know which one I like. I like A. And then I checked AI, and AI was like completely indifferent to which move you play here. Like AI was thinking of B, of C, of playing something around D. Like all of them were the same in terms of point loss. Maybe it also has something to do about with playing with reverse Komi, because when you play with reverse Komi, I think AI gets a bit nihilistic. Like nothing works, nothing's good enough. So that might contribute to all of the moves being the same. So, okay, let's go back. And now we're going to look at our second example. And I think our second example is, which incidentally is also from a teaching game I played against a student who's 2Q this time instead of 1 done. This example is a little bit clearer. But I also had a thought process during the game about whether I want to play the dame or make the opponent play the dame, which is what I think makes it a good example. So let's go ahead. I'm white, obviously, and again, I think I'm also playing this one with reverse 20 komi. I usually play with about 20 reverse 20 komi with students that are around like 2Q, 1Q, 1 done level, and it seems that it produces good games. So I'm going to speed through the beginning of the game again. That's not entirely our concern. And I'm going to go here. Yes, here. And I played h8 in the game, which is obviously some sort of attacking move. I'm going to ask the chat, what specifically is white looking for with this move? What am I looking at? What am I eventually going to try and do? Maybe. Because this move has like an idea, a follow-up. It's a specific shape move. I'll drink some water while chat reflects. Why is trying to build a moyo with this move? Well, that's a funny like guess, because it's not entirely what I was thinking about at the time, but on the other hand, this is what the game ended like. So yeah, I did sort of end up building a moyo here, but that wasn't the idea. In fact, that wasn't the intention. Wait, let's go back. That poor dog, its face will get ripped apart. Yes, yes. So so Go of 10 has, I think, the right idea. This shape, for context, is called the dog face, because you can imagine like the nose and like the nose at A and like the ears, and its face will get ripped apart. I'm aiming at this move, so I'm aiming to at some point play something like A, and then if black captures the stone, I just connect on the outside. And this doesn't look that spectacular for white. You're just connecting your stones and you're giving black an eye to boot. But the reason that this is an appealing shape point is that if you're black, what's your next move? Like, what do you actually do? One of the moves you think about playing is F10, which is actually what my student played. But then that just makes this move much better, because in this context, your cut actually cuts this black stone off, which is not entirely well placed. So that was the idea behind White's move. It's meant to create a problem in A, which may or may not be useful in the future. I'm thinking of just I would never do this now, uh, for reasons I'll explain shortly. But I wanted the weakness to be there, and I just wanted to play some move that puts a little bit of pressure on black. in the game, black played f10. And now we're going to discuss why I didn't play f7 immediately. Because I did think about it. I considered it. And when you think about a weakness like A and how to use it, one way of trying to use it is just using it. Like you just play here, and then you cut black, and you're like, yay, I cut black. And I did consider that. And to be honest, I mean, does it even work yet? It sort of depends on what you mean by work. Um, it does work in the sense that um, like it does. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, I make a, yeah, I'm making a careless move order mistake. I think I should wedge. Sorry about that. You're right. I was careless there. Um, yes, black can bump instead of g7. You're right. Yes. So I should probably start with f9. The reason being that if black blocks this way and now plays g8, you can cut here. And yeah, so sorry about the move order mistake. I'm that's careless of me. So if we block from here, white can cut this way. And this cut actually you can see very quickly that it isn't too good because black kills the right side. One other idea you can play, which I thought of, is starting with the wedge, which I think might be a bit better. Might be. So something like here, 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 and here, and then you cut in co-shape basically. And yeah, this black is a little bit reluctant to play because imagine that white wins it, then white just kills you next move. So maybe cutting this way would be better. I think I think that black's appropriate response to this particular cut would be blocking from e9. Though I'd have to read it to make sure. So what I like about this one is that if white plays e8, we can play this way and now threaten to either ladder or net. So black shape is quite good. And if white wedges, which is the slightly better move, I think we still play here. And after white cuts, yes, after white cuts, then black again gets a nice shape in the center, and the cuts over here don't work because black has this nice Atari in their back pocket. So, I mean, this is actually the best sequence we've looked at out of all of the sequences for white, because by attacking, you get to fix your shape and get a nice territory on the lower side. But in any case, I looked at these variations briefly, and I decided not to play A. And the reasoning was relatively simple. I don't see any of these cases where black's worried. Like, the worst that can happen to black is that the f10 stone gets cut. Like, even if let's look at a very simple example. Let's say white starts with f7. Then let's say black answered, even for the sake of simplicity, here. And this way. What happens? Well, I cut this stone, but black already has an eye. Black has half an eye on the left side. I'm not really denting black too much. So I wasn't that attracted. I didn't think it was that severe to attack this way yet. How about attach at A and then pull back? Oh, this way. I thought you'd do that bad style brute way like that. That looks plausible. I'd be a little bit worried about the agi around e5. Looks a little bit annoying for later. Actually, and when I say for later, I mean now, because if I were black and played here or something, I'd be scared that white will just defend immediately, because now the shape is super solid. So I'd try poking around here first, and maybe with the idea of pulling out here. But this isn't spectacularly worrying. Or is it? Yeah, this fight's odd. The thing is, white's shape is pretty bad, but white also has this. So maybe black isn't having fun. I'm not really sure. Yeah. So yeah, if white blocks this way, then I think white gets a bit annoyed by black's corner shenanigans, potentially. So maybe even cut. No, not cut. Just here. So the idea is that you either get the corner this way, or you you cut, and white has to defend this stone somehow. Maybe you play it this way so that black can't kill, and then this corner is a mess. I'm not sure what's going on in this corner. I don't know. I'd be a little bit concerned about that, but it looks very playable. Yeah, I didn't even think of it. The shape was too brute force for me to look at it, but yeah. Um, and yeah, but you could think of that. And some of these cutting plans are very viable, but I didn't start it immediately. I just decided to leave it. And my logic for leaving it was relatively simple. If black ever fixes the problem, say that black plays like I tenuki, I just decide to do something else with my life. Like I play here or something. And then black plays here, I don't think I'm going to be mad about that. Black just spends another move. That's hardly that's not too annoying for me because that move is not a dame because it strengthens black stones, but it's an unprofitable move. And we can even think about it in terms of white plays A to just attack a little bit, and then somehow A magically forces two defensive moves out of black. So I would have been okay with that. And so since black isn't interested in fixing it because it's a dame, I don't have to use it now, especially if I'm not convinced with what happens if I do cut. So I just decided to leave it. And this cut just exists. This cutting point exists. I can cut if I want to. I don't have to use it now. In fact, I don't know how I want to use it yet. I just know it's there and it might be useful. And then we're going to see how the usage of this cut develops throughout the game. I also had a vague idea that the bigger these stones, the more these stones grow, the more powerful the cut will be. So you keep the cut for later just in case. Yes, yes. And this, by the way, using the cut doesn't even mean I will cut myself. So I would I would actually argue that one of the success cases is that I eventually force black to play here or something. Because black doesn't want to play there. Black is supposed to be connected here. And adding another move would be a little bit slow and a little bit annoying. So there's many ways to use this cut. I just don't know which way I'm using it yet. Yeah. On Actually, on that cut that we looked at earlier, this idea, I don't think it's that difficult to consider. I think I didn't think of it, but I think if I were playing a tournament game, it would cross my mind. Because after all, you are just cutting A. It just works. So I think if you aren't considering it, Siku, it's worth starting to consider in these types of shapes. It's not always good, but it often works. And it can be a good idea. JC Bet says, so you would consider not a big point, and that's the reason you would play anywhere else. Yes, potentially. It's more like black doesn't want to play it, so I don't have to play it myself. Like, okay, black would want to play it if it were very severe, but black's not very worried about it either. So for now, it's just this kind of intangible weakness that will maybe be useful sometime. So we go forward, and I want to go to the moment where this cutting point actually resolves, because it took a while. And black is running on dame, just like me with a weak group. Yes, I mean, I was pretty happy with the state of the game at this particular point. Because, yeah, black's sort of playing on dame, which is one good heuristic for whether a fight's going well for you. If you're making something nice and your opponent's playing on dame, then maybe it's good for you. It's a reasonable rule of thumb. So incidentally, J6 is a bit of a mean move because what I'm doing here is, among other things, preparing to cut here eventually. Eventually. I'm not going to cut here yet. But the more stones I have around, the more severe the cut is. And B is a big move as well. Like you can think of it as just connecting all of these stones. Now I'm all strong. Maybe I can even make a little bit of territory in the center later in the game. I'm also preparing to play B later. So this will eventually help me. So double meaning move, yes, as many good moves are. And we go on. And this move from Black was just a bit slow. I didn't agree with it. I'm not even quite sure what he was worried about. Uh, I mean, I'm not even sure he was worried about something, by the way. I think it's not impossible that he was thinking of cutting here. And then he's like, yes, I want to attack these stones. So, and maybe if I can exchange A for B, B for C, E for F. In fact, we can just put this on the board to appreciate how much Dame Black would be playing. Black, so, like something like this would happen, and this is what Black shape looks like. And I can understand not wanting to be subjected to this, because it does make White stronger, and Black is playing on neutral points. So okay, Black decided to play here, which I still think is a bit slow. And I believe I played H4 next. I played J4 next. I remember parenthetically being spending way too much time thinking about whether I want to play A, B, or C. But yeah, just useful, kind of inefficient time usage, but a tangent. And yeah, we get to here. Yes, yes. So my student peeped and pushed, and I thought that he's pretty clearly thinking of doing something like this. That's the idea. Like he wants to combine this push and this cut to take some territory from me. I'm like, okay, fine. Go ahead. That's a valid thing to do. I'm also not super worried about it. So he pushes, and I thought instead of maybe blocking and then running into some, I mean, running into clamp maybe. Actually, clamp is already a kind of a good move. Wait. I mean, I can deal with it like this. It's just some annoying endgame or something. But Browser says I think I would have played J6 instead of Kosumi as Black. J6. J6 instead of Kosumi? Yes, I agree. I agree. J6 is a better move. I think that's just correct. G13 is a little bit slow. Incidentally, one of the reasons G13 is bad is that you might be connecting your stones, which is why he did it. He's like, oh, now I'm all connected everywhere. The issue is that it's all dame, so it's not very fun to play like this move and then having all of these things happen to you and having to play B, D, and F. So I agree. J6 was a better move. Going forward a bit, Black played push, and I remember being I forget the exact variations I was annoyed at, but just as a potential sample variation, what would it be like? Maybe peep, peep again, and then like here or something. And these variations are very risky for Black because remember this cut over here, it still exists. But during the game, I was like, L2 isn't that big. I'll just play J2. And uh, later I can play L2 if I want to, and I just fix my cuts and I don't really lose that much for it. After all, like I said, if I were to play here, I'm worst case for Black. Black can already get a lot of endgame from this. If Black is really cheeky, so I just realized White doesn't have to connect to J3. White can just play H2. But if Black's feeling particularly cheeky, Black could play here now and play a ko or something. But that's just after H8, I was thinking I don't like White getting J6, so I might have played it directly. Even after H8. Yeah, yeah, I think that J6 is a reasonable move here. I think that F10 is also reasonable because later in the game, and we saw this, Black got to play moves like, I don't know, D13, C13, and reduce White and sort of pressure White here. So that's the reason to go to the left. And that's not a bad idea. But it would have been perfectly fine to play J6 as well. Yes. It is also true that once you go to D, E becomes more of an issue because White might cut you. So, okay. Going forward, I play J2, And this is an interesting moment. Black plays L3 and K3. And Black was almost certainly thinking of some cutting points here and of some cutting points here. So there's a lot of potential for Black. So Black could either play later in the game. Black could consider playing something like, what would it be? This cut and then making a group here. I'm not saying this is good yet. I'm saying that it opens the possibility. Alternatively, Black could cut here, try and make a group, and then start threatening White with the idea of, well, this cut exists and you have to deal with it. So that was Black's idea with K3. And I thought that was reasonable. I was scared enough of the Aji that I wanted to defend, but I also didn't want to just defend at D, because that's dame. So instead, I played B6. And B6 is a funny move because it helps significantly with the aforementioned Aji. So if Black wants to like peep here and play this move, there's there's fewer issues that White has to deal with. So one, like, what would be a good example? Like uh if something like, if Black would start with this peep and here, here. The move order is a bit sketchy. Here. I just realized that White can choose between A and B is probably better. So something like this looks a little bit annoying because I still have this cut to deal with. In fact, Black can start by cutting and then play here. So this type of risk was something that I don't really want to run. So I thought, oh, this C3 move might be annoying. This Aji looks kind of annoying, so let's just play B6. But B6 also has a double meaning. Not only does C6 completely solidify my corner and protect the J3 Aji, it's also Sente. And it's Sente because of the aforementioned problem at F7. So if we remember, a long time ago, I played here at B because I wanted to invoke C. Looking at this, J2 was the best move then. J2, I don't know if J2 is the best move. I think J2 is a good move because it just protects the Aji. And when I played J2, I already had the idea that if Black does play L3, K3, I don't want to connect here. So if I did connect, then you could say that Black's getting some nice endgame profit in Sente. But the case is that I didn't think Black can get this in Sente. So I'm like, I get J2, and I have like a 50% chance of getting L2. So I think J2 is a pretty good move, or a pretty reasonable move. I don't know if it's the best. Going forward, when I play B6, a long time ago, I mentioned how if I cut, and let's take one of the more reasonable variations where I cut. So maybe here and here. This works, yes. So I was concerned earlier because in some of these variations, just for this example, Black could kill my stones by playing C9. Here, I can actually go down, and now I either connect at A or I play B. So Black is toast. So that's a funny way that the Aji has just revived. And another thing I can do is obviously play here, which would cut these stones and also make the Aji at J3 and at K4 irrelevant forever. So this opens up a lot of weaknesses. And most of that is actually due to the extra move I played. And this is how the weakness I created earlier becomes relevant quite a few moves later. And now Black has a very annoying decision to make because Black has a weakness that is actually kind of crippling and could result in a lot of trouble. Like I think if White just cuts this way, Black is possibly dead. That's how bad it is. So with that in mind, Black might have to do something about that. And in the game, black chose to play e8. And that made me quite happy. That was sort of my ideal scenario. So a long time ago, I played h8. I thought, I want to pressure this cutting point, and I'm hoping that either I can cut, and like I can cut black, use that weak point to achieve something productive, I guess, or I'm going to find some other use for it. In this case, it was black spending a move. So way into the future, I got black to play a dame, and I was pretty happy about that. I think for quite a while it had already been my design to force black to play this rather than to play it myself, because every time I tried to make f7 work, it didn't, because black just lived. Like before I played b6, black could just live if I cut, and then I'm not really achieving that much. Now that I play b6, I force e8 out of black, and effectively the result of this sequence is that black fixed the weakness that had been an issue for a while, and played k3, which isn't a very big move at this stage of the game, in gote. So I considered this a victory for me, and the moral of the story is that when you have a weakness like this, you could play it, and maybe it's good, but it's also a dame, and your opponent is usually annoyed if they have to defend. That's the key point. So if you get your opponent to protect something like A, you've already succeeded. You might succeed even more by cutting. Like sometimes you cut and you kill something, or you cut and you get some big profit. And that's good. But it's usually quite good also if you get your opponent to just play the dame. The real lesson here is to be annoying. That's a generally good lesson in Go. So if you think of a move and you're like, I don't know how to answer that move, it's quite a reasonable idea to play it. Yes. Okay. And this example I thought was a better example in the sense that we have a totally worthless move in terms of territory. This f7. I mean, black plays e8. I would play f7 or f9. There's this cutting point that's just totally worthless unless it gets me something for cutting. So I have to threaten it so I get black to play the dame. And I was pretty satisfied with that. With this result, and I thought it's a kind of good example of how you can think about these weaknesses and how you can decide if you cut or if you want your opponent to defend it. So yeah, that's this example. Moving on. Now I want to use some examples from Nordic Godojo games. So like the Nordic Godojo Online League, and I think I picked one or two games in this example that weren't reviewed. So they weren't reviewed by teachers at the Nordic Dojo, but they were they were on the Nordic Dojo page, and I found them, and I'm like, that's a good example. So we'll be going through those. I like to use student examples because you're the ones that I'm trying to teach, I guess, and using your game seems to make sense. So the first game I think is a 1Q level game. And I'm just going to make a very short example. It's just a short and sweet example of something nice that someone did in the NGD. Strong players always annoy you with their moves. Yes, that's the point. If anyone's ever played against Anti, like my teacher, also Nordic Dojo teacher and boss, his specialty is being annoying. And annoying your shape and making you play dame and making you sad. So yes, the lesson is to be annoying. This example is from a Nordic Dojo game. I'll only look at the very beginning of it. And yes, here. I prefer to cause existential crisis. Sure. I mean, my stones sometimes suffer existential crises when I play you. That's true. So in this particular example, we have a group of stones here that white chose to tanuki from, and that's fine. But black has to choose how to attack it. And in the game, black pins at L4, which is very reasonable. You have like a nice distance from the white semi-wall. You're causing a bit of pressure. and white tanukied, which actually I'm going to remove Auntie's notes for the purpose of making my commentary. Um, I mean, Auntie's commentary mostly agrees with me, but I'm just putting it in a different perspective, I guess. So white tanukis, and at this point, black. I mean, arguably black should have tanukied immediately to attack the lower side, but black just defended a bit, and now black switched to the lower side. And I think that black has an interesting decision here as to what to do, because the astute reader might actually notice that the cut works. Like, you can just cut here, and nothing's stopping you. And moreover, saving these stones is really annoying for white. White's actually more predisposed to sacrifice them. And the first sequence I thought of was something like this, where black takes the p3 stones and white gets these stones on the outside. And that's actually not a bad choice. That's a perfectly okay choice, and black's better here. Um, white's shape is a little bit thin. Black gets some extra cash. Black can even keep playing on the outside and claim that white didn't really get that much in exchange for losing the stones. But what black did here was, I thought, kind of smart. Black plays o7. And the reason I like o7 is that you might be thinking of peeping here somehow. Like peeping n5, peeping n4 maybe. If you peep at n4 and white plays n5, then once you hane, white's going to play the tiger's mouth. And if you start with o7, as black so wisely did, and then play n4, then white's shape sucks. And, white tanukied a couple of times, so maybe white's okay with their shape being bad. Sometimes you have bad shape, and instead you get a corner and you reduce black on the right side. This isn't like super bad for white or anything. This is okay. But I thought that black had a nice touch here, just instead of cutting, just weakening white. And as Atari anyone points out, and this happened in the game, we can look at the game a little bit. Black pulls out the stone, and now white has two different weak groups. So I thought what black did here was quite nice. And this idea of, instead of cutting, so you have this move that is a cut. Instead of playing it yourself, you force your opponent to play dame to fix it. And I think that that's quite a nice idea, which not everyone thinks about, because it's very easy to just think about, oh, I want to capture the stones. And it's even nicer here in this case, because I think that the moves are roughly equivalent. They're similarly good. There's not one move that's like clearly better than the other. Both options are valid, and I thought it was kind of cool that black chose the one where you just make your opponent play dame, which can be as powerful as just taking the 4 stones. So I thought that was cool. So that was this short example, which I quite liked. Incidentally, I'm just having a thought that's going through my head. I'm wondering what's the probability that black didn't play o5, not because they didn't they thought that it wasn't good, but because they just missed that the cut exists. I mean, the game was played between 1Qs, who I think would probably see this. So I'm gonna give black the benefit of the doubt and assume that black was just pretty smart here, instead of not seeing the cut. But it just crossed my mind that that's not impossible, I guess. So yeah, that's this example. It's a shorter one. If anyone has questions on the examples or something, feel free to interrupt. But for now, I'll move to the next one. When I was watching the game, I didn't consider the cut. Ah, I see. Yeah, of course. So Siku must have been watching this because it's a Nordic Dojo League game. People usually post when they will play on the Discord server, and like Nordic Dojo people watch. So yeah, I can understand how you might miss the cut. And in fact, Siku is 1Q, like the people who played this game. So maybe we have a good indication that black may have missed it, and I'm allocating praise where it's not due, but I might be, so I'd rather give the benefit of the doubt. Didn't directly consider it either when the position was shown. I see. I think the reason you might not consider it, going back to the example briefly, I'll talk about this a little bit. The reason you might not consider it is that it looks very ladder-y. Because it looks like some ladder will work for white, except it doesn't. The reason I think that black did see it is black's pincer. So when black pincered at L4, why are you pincering at L4 and not at K4 and not at M4? I think that one of the reasons might be that it perfectly sets up the cut. Like, I think it's like optimized for annoyance, because if you played one closer and then you cut, like white Tanuki somehow, then you could argue that it's easier for white, not that, it's easier for white to sacrifice this way, maybe. Maybe. You could argue that. I'm not sure if I agree. But L4 makes me think that black did see that the cut was there. At least they were aiming for it in the future. I was just thinking the Hana is perfect and didn't think further. Well, that's actually quite a reasonable instinct, because if you think about Go from a shape perspective, and when I say shape, it's nice to make your opponent's stones redundant. Like, if we look at this position, black is really happy here because, as Siku says, the shape is perfect. Like, black stones are all doing something, and white stones are kind of inefficient locally. So if you want to just be happy about this and not think any further, that's a reasonable thing to do. I would still recommend you look at the cut, just in case it works and just in case it's better. But if this is your first instinct and you play that, that's also fine, I think, or at least it's not too bad. So okay, next example, and I'm going to look at my notes because I forget which. I know which examples I have. I just don't know which one is next. Yes, okay. So this is another Nordico Dojo game, and this was between, I think, a 2-dan and a 1Q, and I think the 1Q is in chat, I think, if I remember correctly. Oh wait, sorry, this is, okay, there we go. So this game, we're going to go far into the future. In fact, I don't think we even want to look at the game. I think I want to go to, yeah, move 85. Okay. Someone in chat might recognize the game now. So what we're going to discuss this time is Black's group in the center. The game I exploded in. I guess, yes. I even forget. I think you were Black this game, right, Siku? I think. I forget. I know who played the game, but I prepared this lecture a couple of days ago and I forgot like who's who already. You were White. Okay, okay. Uh, yeah, I think the game was good for white here, and then it went a little bit out of control. I think that's what I seem to remember. Um, so at this particular point, white has a decision to make, and the decision is, well, black has this weak group, and what do I do about it? And the first instinct is to play e10 because that takes black's eye shape and force black to run. And in fact, we're just going to look a little bit further into the game to see how that turned out. So black sort of got out with these stones, is kind of live, and life goes on. We can kill locally, yes. Yeah, that's the important observation to make. We can kill locally. Do we? Do we want to? And something like the alternative would be a move like h13. You heavily regretted trying to kill. I always do. Oh, that's unfortunate, Siku. Actually, since we have one of the players in the chat, I'd like to ask Siku, what would you have played in this situation if you played it over again? Or like, which were you fine with this move and disliked some of the killing attempts later? Or did you already regret E10? Because E10 is like the start of your killing attempt, I would say. I'm a bit curious as to like where the regret starts, I suppose. Because it might also be relevant to the lecture, so E10 is necessary, I think. Okay. And later in the game, you weren't happy with the attack. Okay. I'm actually going to spoil this. I agree that E10 is necessary because it's very tempting to say, let's just play it's sort of obvious that um, black is not, or maybe not obvious, but I think it's likely. It looks quite likely that black's not actually going to be in trouble with this group. In the game, black attached, black Atari'd, first black Haned, and here it's abundantly clear that all black needs to do to make life is just connect here. And in fact, in the game, black didn't actually try and just live. Black was a bit more ambitious. Black pulled out the stones, kept fighting, etc. And yeah, black's not really in trouble. White's not attacking to kill, or white shouldn't be attacking to kill. Um, we're just attacking for profit here. My regret is K15. Yeah, we can look at that. We'll look at that in a bit, actually, Siku. We can go a little bit further into this game and analyze that. So going back, it's sort of clear that black isn't imminently going to die. So we're not attacking to kill exactly. We're attacking to profit. And then it seems sort of tempting to say, oh, let me just take the outside and force black to play this small E10 move. There's an underlying fallacy there, or maybe not a fallacy, but an inaccuracy. E10 is not small in this case. It just looks small. And in fact, if, like, in this position, imagine white already had a stone at f8. I think that jumping here would be the correct move. Because, or, like, would at least be as good as playing e10. Because once white cuts, and white doesn't gain that many points, but black does get out fairly comfortably. And you could argue that white's potential has decreased. After e10, f8's annoying. Exactly. So in this particular case, e10 is deceptively huge. Yeah, well, yeah, without e10, yes, you're right. In fact, if white tries to jump, then the meanest thing black can do is start with f8 and first crumple white into like this insignificant dumpling and then defend. And this would be quite nice for black, comparatively speaking. I think what white did in the game was correct. So I thought this was a funny case of, well, this isn't necessarily an attacking move, it's just a shape move. And it's pretty big. So it's not always like enclosing is the right decision, I suppose. If we go a little bit further, however, it's true that white's lust to kill sort of overcame them. um, yeah. So we can look at the game. I remember that things fell apart for white somewhat quickly here. And this position, by the way, is good for white. I think white's doing quite fine here. And I think here you played K15, right? Yeah. Siku played K15 here. And I can see white's idea here, I think. I think the idea is that if black passes and is a good docile, and the group becomes like a good docile group that allows itself to get killed, white cuts here. And if black connects, you probably want to play something like this. This is like the dream scenario. I mean, black had to play like 3 bad moves in a row for this to happen. But I think that that's the type of idea, the type of weakness that white wants to create. Alternatively, if black plays at h14, then maybe now you can play a ko, or you can hane here and play a ko. So this was white's idea. The issue for white is that white's shape in the center is a little bit terrible. And stuff like this hane will be really annoying, and that's what black played. So now white has a liberty shortage with these 2 stones, and in fact black is threatening to capture. And the game was pretty annoying for white because black weakened white's shape and then came back to fix the weakness anyway. I'm wondering if it's necessary, by the way. I would actually be more tempted to play L13 here, or maybe even M13 here. So the reason being that if white plays the cut, we can always just kill, snap back. And if white plays this way, we lose a little bit of cash, but we also already protected this cut, which is relevant for attacking white in the center. So black can decide what to do here, but I think that white lost most of their advantage by allowing this hane to happen. Interestingly, game would be fine if I didn't then try to kill the bottom left. You tried to kill the bottom left. I didn't look at the game in that much detail. I just saw this part and was interested in it. Wow. Tried to kill the bottom left. So, I mean, this is a slight tangent from the topic of not playing Dame, but I guess the the thing I'm trying to say here is public service announcement. Trying to kill is bad. Um, Unlike in real life, it's not bad because killing is bad. It's bad because sometimes it doesn't work. Um, yeah, and then you end up poor and destitute in prison. So this E10 move is actually quite fine because it's just continuing an attack while fixing a shape. But later, one could argue that white started attacking for the sake of attacking, not entirely which is not entirely what this lecture is about. This is a tangentially related topic. In fact, I've done a lecture on attacking and attacking for profit rather than attacking to kill. And I think this topic of not playing dame is almost a subclause of it. It's an extension topic where we're specifically looking at ways to make your opponent to play dame. And often that involves, like, for example, threatening a cutting point and your opponent has to connect it. K15 happens to be dame too. Yes, yes. You can't spin it that way. The reason it doesn't fully apply to the example of the lecture is that most of the examples I have here are more like, do you want to play a dame or do you want to make your opponent play it? I can't really think of variations where black plays K15 for themselves. So this isn't one of those moves that you want to play, or like you wonder, do you want to play it or do you want to make your opponent play it? It's more the class of move that nobody wants to play. But you played it anyway, I guess. But this is this is why this is linked to attacking to kill. Yes. So anyway, I think that K15 doesn't fully fall into this category. I would if I made a lecture about times that Bloodlust lost games, this would be one of them, I guess. That it fits better there. Yeah. So unfortunately that didn't work out. And yeah, Black ended up winning this game, which is unfortunate because White had, well, unfortunate for White anyway, because White had been doing well beforehand. Okay, so that's this game. And the next example is, yes, this one. And I like this example. It's a nice example. It concerns an invasion. Yeah, Atari Anyone basically summarizing the lecture. Attacking to kill often involves playing dame and small moves yourself. Yes, yes. And if you want it, like, often it's better to make your opponent play the dame moves to live rather than playing the dame moves yourself. And that is the topic of this lecture. So, okay. This game is also a Nordico Dojo game. I think played between a 1Q and a 4Q, I think. Um, so we're going to go a bit forward, and yeah, we go to this move, and I'm going to remove the. Well, actually, that we'll keep the markings. The thing is, this game got reviewed by Antti for the Nordico Dojo, so the SGF has some like markings and stuff which I didn't remove. So Black invade, and the invasion is criticized in Antti's commentary, basically because the right side is too small, according to him. And I think that that's a reasonable assertion. So if Black invades somehow, what's a good example of a standard invasion that could happen here? Something like this. This is a classic invasion joseki. Black invades, Black takes White's territory, White gets a little bit of outside strength, and White gets sente. And in this case, we can postulate that this isn't worth it because the right side is pretty small. It's barely 20 points. So maybe it's not worth invading so early. And Antti suggests A, B, and C as like alternatives. Now, the way that the game went is White plays Q12. Black plays in the game. Black played R13, which is actually a shape mistake. It's not super bad, but it's not ideal. And in fact, Antti suggests wedging at A instead for Black, which is I think the best move. And instead, black focuses on living. And I want to make a point here about focusing on living, because when I say black's focusing on living, I mean that. I mean that black isn't focusing on anything else. Like, black's sole purpose in life is living this group for these few moves. And we'll talk about this later. Um, a In the commentary, Anti suggests instead cutting at A, B, C, and finally black plays S12 and white fixes the shape. And this result is pretty bad for black, because we may have taken some of white's right side, which is what black set out to do in the first place, but white got a really strong influence, white kept some of the right side, and white got to reduce black's corner, which is basically nothing now. In fact, you could almost argue that the corner half belongs to white, because white can always just play here and make the corner their own. So if we go back, what went wrong? I think that what went wrong is that black focused on the goal of living, of making a living group in white's territory at the expense of the details. And this actually brings me to a tangential point, which I think is quite relevant. In Go, what you do doesn't always matter as much as how you do it. Because there are good ways to invade. Like, this invasion is suboptimal, but if you wedged and either got some Aji, does the latter work? Yes. If you got some Aji, if you got some outside strength, or if white lets you live this way, which is a much better shape that has more space, uh, that that's more important than invading and then just optimizing to make two eyes, because that's not the only thing you need to optimize for in Go. And while making sure that they were alive, black missed opportunities to play better moves, basically. And you can sort of tell that this is a bit of a failure of an invasion when, or at least suboptimal, when you see how black had to play both A and B. Like, black's playing all of these dame moves inside the territory that they just invaded, and white's getting outside stones that are going to be useful. And I think that it's actually a good rule of thumb, or a good indicator of whether an invasion is doing well, is how many times you have to, for example, add moves to just live. And this is a very clear example, because after black plays T11, after white, in fact, white gets to turn again, and black defends again. And black is just suffering. And instead, black had to avoid playing the dame. And you often see this, by the way, in... I'm going to, before we end the lecture, I'm going to show you, if I can find it, I'm going to show you a game I played in one of the online rated tournaments, the Corona Cup, which I just thought of. I didn't prepare this for the lecture, but I have this example in my mind that I think is very useful. The reason black starts cutting here is that you don't want to just let white get a strong shape on the outside. You don't want to have to play these dame or even minus point moves. I mean, A is not minus points, but B is, right? B is just playing inside your own territory for the purpose of living. So black is going to delay this as long as possible. The later you have to play the small move, the better, usually. And if you don't have to play it at all for some reason, like say that for some reason you kill white, or say that you I don't even know what white does here. It's actually kind of severe. Like, white could have gotten in trouble here potentially. How does this go? Maybe in trouble is a strong word, but maybe something like for example, if white plays the turn, we might even try and kill white and just win the Liberty race, which might work, might not. I'm not sure, but that's the type of idea that the black could go for. Maybe a better rendition of this would be to play O15 immediately The idea being that you're like kind of threatening. You're kind of threatening to kill the white stone since this Atari is yours for free. So you'd rather create problems, and in fact white does have some issues here. I'm not even sure who's better in this fight. It's just a mess. Like white plays something like R17, white tries to live in the corner, black maybe tries to activate the cutting points. Now we get to connect S11 and Senta, by the way. Like that, already creating this cuts has allowed black to play the second line move in Sente, instead of, like, in the game, white had the leisure to play B instead of having to defend. So something like this. Maybe you... I'm putting this exchange on the board just for the purpose of helping you visualize that it's there. Like, that's why maybe it's not so easy for white to push through this way, because black captures the stones. And in fact, that might be okay for white, so let's be really safe and play the exchange now, play this next, and now even try and kill white, because we have an extra move. So that's the type of idea that black should be going for. And what's really clear is that if you can possibly avoid playing S12, then avoid playing S12, because it's a dame move. In fact, if you manage to live some other way, it's worth -1 point. So, in fact, I'm thinking that white probably doesn't have time to play Q8, because Q17 is really severe. Maybe a realistic course of events would be white defends, then black cuts, and then at the end of the sequence, black has successfully avoided having to play S12, instead getting like managing to live in ways that are more profitable. So that's just a short example of the type of thing that black should be doing instead. And instead, black's just lived, kind of meekly, and that ends up in a very negative result, because black is just not playing profitable moves. And it's a very common motif that in sequences where you have an enclosed group, the side that is enclosed is trying their very best to not have to add the inside move, to add the dame, because it's basically like a pass. You would rather not have to be forced, like not be forced to play a dame, right? In fact, you can almost reframe the way that this invasion turned out. You can even reframe it as, would you rather take half of the right side and then play a dame move, or would you rather just play somewhere else? Because that's the price that black ultimately ends up playing. They're paying. Some of these moves that are related to this fight are useful for the rest of the game. For example, when white defends this weakness, white's not just fixing their shape on the right side, white's also making themselves strong and preparing to pincer. It's a useful move otherwise. S12 is only useful for living on the right side, basically. Side note, after black just lives, outside weaknesses are much less to white. Yes. In fact, one of the reasons that these weaknesses are so useful for black and so annoying to white is that when black would ideally play them at a time when black hasn't played the dame move yet. So black is not just trying to kill something here. Black is more accurately we can say that black is trying to avoid having to play the dame. And once black has played the dame, the cuts matter less. For example, say that white tanukis now. And by the way, I still agree with white defending. I think it's the right move. Say that black cuts this way and white defends. Dying with the stone matters less once black has already defended. Actually, let's make the example even clearer. After white plays, because I chose the wrong move. Here, black hasn't played the dame yet. Once black has played this S12 move, this sequence looks much nicer for white than it used to, because it's like the sequence we looked at earlier, except black has played A. So, wait, how do we ban this bot? A bot showed up in chat. Man, I've forgotten how to ban people on Twitch. Okay, I guess we'll just live with it. So Safodio says, for Sabaki, you need to be conscious of and exploit the weaknesses of your opponent's position. Yeah, that's a very accurate comment. I fully agree. So one very common thing that happens when people are living, and this is related, is that people, when people invade, they're usually thinking of just living, and that's not really optimal because the best way to live and make sabaki and make life is usually to exploit your opponent's weaknesses. You don't get anywhere usually just by looking at your own weaknesses and fixing your own weaknesses. You also need to extort stuff from your opponent. And Black was so focused on living here that um they forgot to actually yeah, one second. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for telling me how to ban someone. Yeah, so one would think that I haven't been streaming on Twitch for 2 years. Um, but oh well. I guess that the wholesome side of that is that I don't really have to ban people often. So, um, you could even say that they don't have to go often. Hmm. Anyway, so that sort of concludes my thoughts on this example. It's the main point here, and it's related to the whole living thing, the whole you invade and you live, is that when people optimize solely for living, they miss out on a lot of opportunities to get stuff out of their opponent. And Black did the same here. And one of the main motivations that you can look at, like one of the main ways that you can motivate yourself to look at your opponent's weaknesses, is when you're faced with the prospect of having to play S12. Because um, when you have to play S12, I would recommend that a very loud part of you groans in like almost disgust. Like, I don't want to play that dame. And you try to find any way of not playing the dame because it's like a pass. You'd rather not pass if you can help it. And I think that that could have motivated Black into seeking the weaknesses. And instead, Black just said, "Oh, I'm living. I'm busy living," and forgot. And I think didn't think that deeply into whether the way that they're living is optimal or whether the goal becomes worth it if you optimize for living this way. So yeah, that concludes this example, I think. And in fact, I would show a different example which I had, but I've also uh, been now lecturing for 75 minutes, so it's about time to wrap up. Um, the other examples would already be would take quite a while, so I think I'll just wrap up here. If anyone has any questions, anything to remark, feel free to ask. You can also, I guess you could. It's actually hard to contact us, huh? I mean, yeah, it's sort of hard to contact the Nordico Dojo unless, like, you join it, I guess. Oh wait, no, the forums are open. Yeah, true. So in theory, you can ask teacher stuff or participate in the forums. Or there's also, I mean, the Nordico Dojo is a Go school. We like people that subscribe to us actually they basically they sponsor these lectures. So thank you for those of you who are subscribed to the NGD. Thank you to those who watched. The Nordic Go Dojo also has an online league where you play games and we review some of them, like I think 4 per month or something like that. Um, and yeah, feel free to join or check out the website. I think nordicodojo.eu. Maybe Antti can post it since he's in chat. And yeah, we review games, we do lectures, stuff like that. There can always be a part 2 of this lecture. Yes, indeed. Nice lecture, very engaging. Thank you. I'm really glad you liked it. Yeah, one of the nice things about Nordico Dojo is that there is a lot of free content too. Antti has some blog posts, I think some Sumego. Um, yeah. We also have some sample reviews, I think, on the website. So some free content also. Yeah. And many students. That's also true. Yeah, true. So I think that the Nordico Dojo usually holds lectures on the first and third Saturdays of each month, but the third Saturday of this month coincides with the European Go Congress, which I think almost every Nordic Dojo teachers at, so we won't be holding it. We'll just be holding the next one. I think almost all of the Nordic Dojo teachers will be at the Congress, including myself, and I think how much of the students will be there. Second and fourth. Oh, second and fourth. I apologize. Sorry, Auntie. Yeah, second and fourth Saturdays. Sorry about that. We'll be at the European Go Congress. It'll be nice to meet some of the students there, but yeah, we won't be holding a lecture, at least online. We might hold some live lectures, who knows? Um, and in that case, we'll be back in like early August, like the second week of August. And NGD this, yeah, yeah. The thing is, yeah, Baby Shambles asked about a Discord. We actually do have a Nordic Dojo Discord, which is really active. We like do a bunch of stuff. Like people are talking about all kinds of things. Um, they also talk about Go occasionally, but yeah, like cooking, programming, random stuff. So yeah, but the Nordic Dojo is actually you only get into it by subscribing to the NGD. Once your subscription to the NGD ends, you can still be in the Discord server. So there's that. I have my own Discord server, but I won't post it here. I do stream myself sometimes, so you might see me around. Yeah. So thank you to everyone for watching. Glad. Thank you, Zephodius. Thank you, Revelite, for chatting and saying hello. And yeah, I will be. Yeah, Wordle. Yes, yes. We also post about Wordle. Personally, I don't play Wordle, so I have the Wordle channel muted. Um, yeah. But yeah, I will be off. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see some of you at the Congress, and otherwise see you in August, I guess, for more lectures. Bye.